So, yesterday we talked about the silica sand and the controversy around that. And of course, we have silica sand here in southeastern Minnesota. Not a lot of mining has gone on, and these are mines, as you see on the right-hand side. But in western Wisconsin, a lot of that has gone on. Silica sand is perfect. It's a hardcore sand. Again, it's used in large amounts to blast down from the surface down to the shale rock out in places like Williston, North Dakota. And here is where you find all your veins of oil that's then pumped up into the oil rigs and then shipped out all over the country, maybe even all over the world. So that is one type of sand or one type of soil and a use for it. This is another one. This is kind of near and dear to me. I'll start with a story. As a little kid, I grew up in Goodhue, Minnesota, and my grandma and grandpa Beats, they grew up, or their farm wasn't too far away where my mom grew up. It was in between Goodhue and Redwood, okay? And I always remember going out there and kind of scratching my head when I was a kid. But we'd go out there, and her farm was different than everybody else's around because you go out there, you'd have your farmland and everything, but behind her farm was a series of very, very large ponds, okay? And deep ponds. How do I know? Because I watched the cows jump into the pond, all right? And they were way up to here, just swimming across. And it just sounded like, you ever take a rock and you throw it into a body of water and it kind of makes different sounds, like depending how deep it is? And we do that sometimes. And so around her farm, or their farm I should say, was this series of ponds. There's maybe 5, 6 of them, and they were deep, deep, deep ponds, all right? And so anyway, one day as a kid I said, Grandma, how come you're so different than everybody else? And that no one else has these big ponds around here, and yet you've got these huge ponds. What's the deal? And she said, when I was a young child, and my grandma Beats lived to be 93, and she died almost 20 years ago, so this is a long time ago. But you're talking like in the 1920s and 1930s, they came out and they tested the soil out there, and they did, not just the surface soil, but they went way down and said, hey, we got something here. This is the exact type of soil that we want. And so they pulled up they started digging a little bit more, and they said, hey, we can take this soil and we can send it to the city of Red Wing, which is probably about 10 or 12 miles away, on these trucks. And so here's a picture of when they were extracting the clay, all right? This is what Grandma's ponds were made of. Those are people, okay? Look how deep. I mean, those ponds probably, at least at this point, are at least 30 feet deep, okay? So you fill that up with water over time is what they had, and that's why my Grandma Beats had all those big ponds around her place. But anyway, what they would do is they would take the soil out, all right, and they'd dig down, and they didn't have near the equipment we had today, obviously, and they'd put on these trucks and they would ship it.
Cancel, Mr. Brighton.
They would ship it off to this big factory that says Red Wing Stoneware, and this huge building. It's probably a football field long. You can picture that. Not quite as wide, and there's 2 layers to it. And these are all the people standing in front that work there, and so it employed a lot of people. But what they did is they made all this Red Wing pottery, all right? And so this is an example of, this one's probably, probably about a foot tall, maybe 6, 7 inches wide. But then some of these got really, really big, all right? And then when they were done, they always stamped on there, here's the Red Wing, all right? And it said Red Wing Stoneware, all right? And so as a kid growing up, we always had a big one of these, big, it's almost the size of this desk. And it was probably at least 1 inch thick. So when we would go, we always had a day of butchering chickens, okay? And it was actually a 2-day event. I hated butchering chickens. To this day, I hate butchering chickens, okay? Just, look, you don't want to do it? No thank you. Anyway, but at the end of the day, so you'd butcher the chicken, you would defeather them, you'd gut them, and then you had to cool the body down. Remember, their temperature is about 105 degrees, okay? So you don't just take it and go whoop, into the freezer. You'd have a mess on your hands when you took them out to cook them. So you got to slowly cool it down, all right? So out comes the big crock of red wing pottery. And it sat in the evergreens upside down. We had a windbreaker on our place. And it sat in the evergreens upside down for 363 days a year. Okay? Of course, 365, you add the 2 days on, that was our 2 days of butchering chickens. So we'd wheel that thing out, flip it over, fill it up with water from a hose, okay? And when the chickens were done getting butchered, you just started filling it with carcasses of chickens. You can fill it up, you know, you can fit quite a few chicken carcasses in there, all right? It's not like we had 100 chickens, okay, and enough to take to the county fair. So we maybe had 50, 60, 70 at the most. Anyway, that's why it took 2 days. You fill it up, cool it down, cool their bodies down, all right? You might even dump it out, add a little bit more water, cool the body down a little bit more. Then, you know, you can picture hose temperature, what, 40, 50 degrees, somewhere in there, right? You take them out, cool them down, put them in a nice big freezer storage bag, zip them up, put them in the freezer, good chicken for the rest of the year, right? You get done now, 2 days of butchering chickens, dump out the water, wheel it back into the evergreens, and there it's at. That thing, when I was a little kid all the way to probably 10 years ago, it still sat there, and it never cracked. And that was the beauty of red wing. They made it hardcore. It was good, thick clay, dirt, or soil that they had in there, all right? And they would put that stamp on there. And anybody have any of this at home to this day? You have some? Don't ever lose it. When my grandma passed away, my mom came to me and said, hey, and I had, oh gosh, I probably had 20 other grandkids, you know, that, you know, including myself. And so mom said, you know, we're giving out grandma's stuff. And I said, I'll take some red wing pottery. She said, too late. She goes, all your aunts and uncles spoke for it first. I'm like, so anyway, if you can, this stuff that's antique, if you ever go to an antique auction or an antique store, people spend a lot of money. This is a very, very valuable antique that people will, that really, they covet, okay, and they want it. So if you ever get your hands on some, especially the older stuff, hang on to it. The reason is too, you brought up, about 2 weeks ago, and it's way different now. It's not the size of a building. It's probably just like a little corner of this building, but they still make red wing pottery. By the way, take a step back. When they got sick of it, digging up soil around Grandma's place, they just walked away, left it. There's no filling it in or anything like that. So I just fill in with water and turn it into just a great big huge pond. All right, nowadays they probably wouldn't allow that to happen. But so they still would find some of the right soil in the red wing area, and they still were making it up until a couple weeks ago. But the people that ran red wing pottery, they started having health issues, getting a little bit older, so on and so forth, and they said, you know what, we're gonna close her down. And so they no longer, as of like 2 weeks ago, do not make red wing pottery at all. At one point, made it, you know, you needed a huge warehouse and factory to do it. Now it's just kind of like, I think I saw in the news, there's maybe 4 or 5 people that work there. It was down to that. But anyway, again, if you can ever get your hands on red wing pottery, hang on to it because it's worth a lot of money. All right, thanks, Abs.